Well, as you can see and probably hear, I did not do a good prediction the other day of it's going to snow. I put the plow on the gosh darn truck. We didn't get one flake. All it did was the wind came up from the south with some warmer weather, and it's somewhere in the 40s right now. Very raw out though. I'm going to take Bullseye for a quick walk in this, but it's not exactly the greatest weather. I want to get to the mill and start cutting a log, but I don't know if I'm going to get to it today. Let's see what happens. Oh well. Another rainy day in Pennsylvania. It's good though for our water table. I don't know if you ever gave it much thought, but an inch of water on an acre of ground gives, just 1 acre gives you a whole lot of water in your water table if you think about it. Got to do the math on that. Anyway, time to get Bullseye out. Bullseye! He's over watching the squirrel. Come on, let's go for a walk. Well, you guys can watch from the shed. I want to get some of this sawdust. Now that it's not frozen, I can get some of this cleaned up a little bit. Even if you clean the sawdust up regularly like I do, what happens in the wintertime, especially when it was real cold there, the wood sawdust that you're cutting off the logs is so cold that when it hits the concrete it sort of freezes right away, and doesn't make it very easy for you to pick it up. That's what happened with this stuff. So, and then in the bunk, in between the, well, that wasn't nice. In between the bunk rails, I'll show you that. In between the bunk rails, you can see that it's pretty dirty in there. And it's not like I say because I don't want to clean up. It's a matter of I couldn't clean it up. There was snow in there in the middle that was had come down as kind of rainy, wet snow, and then it froze solid by the next morning, so I couldn't really get it out of there. In Pennsylvania, we get a lot of freezing and thawing, and you can see there how the concrete stayed together nicely. I thought it would because I did put a lot of mesh and stuff in it, so it's doing good. I just want to try and clean up what's underneath the mill of this thing. Outside, and I almost don't care what the weather is to a degree, but it has its drawbacks. Some of these is really icy yet. Any salt on there, because if I do that, I'm going to get the concrete coming apart. And I don't want that to happen. Still a lot of ice down there. And the thing is the sawdust. Years ago they used sawdust to help preserve ice, but we didn't really know how to make a refrigerator. That was before my time. But when you let the sawdust go on top of the ice here, it keeps the ice from melting. Put some kind of cover over this. But I was going to say before is I like working outside a lot. I don't like being cooped up. I don't even like wearing this jacket that I'm wearing here. But I do, you know, because of the rain. The thing is if I covered this with something, it'd be a lot easier to get the snow away from it. I'm going to have to come up with something lightweight. Probably it's just a tarp, I guess. The only trouble is the snow gets so heavy that it weighs the tarp down and the tarp tears on all the sharp edges and stuff. It's kind of a nuisance. Probably some thin plywood might work. Some exterior half-inch plywood might be better. Couple of nice days really get you wanting to do stuff. But it's raining now, weather now. I don't feel like getting sick, although if I start to cut something, I'll end up getting sweated up and everything, so probably no cutting today. Well, don't you look like a drowned rat? Come on up, Bullseye, up, so I can take your collar off, yeah. Good boy. Man, are you wet? Nothing like a wet dog. Really. Go dry up. Go dry off by the fire. Last summer when my grandson was up here helping me, he talked about building a fire pit, and I didn't want anything too big because it's only the two of us here, or four of us I should say, but I built this out of rocks that he went and gathered from around the property and that. So a neighbor of mine then came. You can see this is concrete. I poured concrete in here down about 3 feet or so. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8 tiers. There's concrete in all of them. There's snow now. But anyway, I want to build a deck here 16 foot from the house over to here, and then on an angle, or straight across to this one, and then an angle to that one. The reason for the angle is I don't want to cut any trees down, and I still want to be able to get the four-wheeler through right here when I chasing bullseye. So I want to start to build this deck in spring, and I had gotten a really generous offer for one of the YouTubers that's said he would come up here and help me with his wife, and sounds like a good plan to me. Right now I need to get these flat rocks picked up. I'll use those for steps somewhere in here to step from there onto the deck. I still want to keep this little planting thing back here, so I'm going to build a deck like right from here out. It's 12 foot from the patio door there over to the end of the deck. So basically 12 by 16. It's not very big compared to a lot of decks I've built, but originally when I built this house where you see the patio doors there, that was an open porch, and we used it a couple of times to enjoy just being out here. There's another walkway on the opposite side to get out of here, or out of the room. The problem with it is the bugs in the spring and stuff are so bad. The deer flies are the size of B-52 bombers, so we decided to close it in, and we've made a lot better use of it closing it in than we have not closing it in. So that was a good decision there. But we'd like to build this deck around this fire pit. For those of you who are worried about a wood deck around the fire pit, we're not the type to leave things do what they want. We'll watch it closely. Yeah, so I got to get some boards made for this. I have probably everything I need to frame the understructure, and I want to put treated posts down onto the concrete so I don't have to worry about them, which I have some 6x6s that are treated that I can use for that. But I do have to cut this down a little bit because you see I don't really have a lot of room from here up to the step, so that's not really enough room for framing lumber to hold the deck. So I need to skim off probably about 4 inches, just skim this whole thing off, which I'll do with the backhoe as soon as the snow's gone, because everything is muddy and messy right now. So hopefully those of you who may want to watch that, that's something that'll be upcoming, and I frame around this thing and stuff and sit out here and enjoy this. Last year we were sitting out here before we dug the pier holes. We had the little fire going, and just show you from this point of view, we were sitting here with my grandson, and right there a great big black bear came down. She was after the bird feeder, and she laid right by that pine tree, just laid there watching us. And I mean, you're talking, that's less than 12 feet away from where we were. From here to here is about 10 feet. So we were sitting 1, 2, 3, and she just laid down like the dog does, put her head between her paws and just kept watching. We don't feed her or nothing. I don't know how she, apparently she's not afraid of people, so she just came and laid down. We went in the house then, because as the fire burned down, we weren't sure what she was going to do. So, but it's nice here. We enjoy it. It's very quiet most of the time. You hardly hear anything. Today a little bit, some trucks are going by for the gas well people, but other than that. So that's what I'm after here, to build this deck then. So I'm going to have to cut posts for this. I'm just not ready to do it yet, because it's everything, like I say, is muddy. It's hard to get to the wood that I need. So hopefully you will enjoy that video when I go to make it. This is one of the reasons why I'm holding off on trying to do something with the deck. Inside that garage is where my pine lumber is. And I could probably clean this up with the backhoe, but there's no sense in tearing things up, because even if I sit on the stone driveway, I'll be putting holes all over the place with it because it's so heavy. So I'm just going to wait for things to melt. So every morning what I do is I come into the garage here, I get a fire going. My kindling pile is down to nothing. Usually started with newspaper to kindling, and then I bring a wheelbarrow load of firewood in, and I'll use that. Usually one of these lasts me probably 2 days or so. It depends on how hard I burn it. So I need to clean up a little bit here from the logs I did have stacked in here. Put this plywood to protect the drywall a little bit, and I'm going to just start stacking the kindling in there. I have quite a bit of it. Boy, are you a mess. Yow dog. I need a bath. Trying to keep my truck from getting wet. Anyway, I have this bucket of pine kindling that I split the other day. I'll put it in here, and I probably won't even get to use a whole lot of this because of it's a little too wet to build fires with, but by next summer, or winter I should say, this will be nice and dry. And if I don't stack it in the garage now, I'll end up putting some tool in the space of where this goes. So I better start stacking it so I don't have to move something else later on. So this is a good rainy day thing to do. My wife says I can get dirtier faster than anybody she ever saw. I guess it's true. I really don't have any regard for clothing. I don't know if I'm ashamed to say it, but that's, I can get my clothes messed up so fast it isn't even funny. Usually when I get holes in my shirts, I give him the bullseye. He likes laying on stuff that I was wearing, right, Bullseye? Yeah, what I was saying before I stopped recording there is that I usually have a fan running in here in the summertime, and what I was trying to finish my thought there is this stuff, this kindling that's in here will be drying up really good because I have a lot of airflow in here. Like I say, in the summertime, as cold as it gets here in the winter time, it goes probably to 80 degrees. Sometimes it hits 90. I hate those days. I usually come in the garage, keep all the doors shut, turn the fan on, and it stays nice and cool in here. Bullseye, where are you? Okay. Okay, boy. A lot of times I'll get comments, and the comments will be about how I can do something more efficiently. I don't know about you, but to me, after worrying every day about projects being done for more than 40 years, at a certain time, and collecting checks at a certain time, and making payroll at a certain time, I don't care what time it is, and I don't care how long it takes me. I'm doing this because I enjoy doing it, not because I'm on a clock. So I could get a wheelbarrow, I could carry this in, I could actually put a door over there where the window is and make this whole project easier. I'm not interested in easier. I'm interested in keeping my day full of good, honest, non-troublemaking work. I think I'm going to run out of space before I run out of wood. For other, well, save these long ones later. Guys, I was going to make a video today about wood miser and cutting. A bunch of people have said to me, you know, to leave the blade down after you go through a cut. Let me dump this and I'll be right back. Yeah, they said after you go through the cut with the wood miser, I've had a bunch of different suggestions. One is to not let the saw blade go all the way through the cut. So in other words, you got the saw curve, you're coming through, and instead of passing through, just let the teeth come through the cut. This top board will be loose, and then just back the saw up. And then the saw blade should ride along the top of the cant, you know, to get back to the next cut. First of all, there's two things. And Wood Miser says it in their book. They say it on their website if you read it. And I believe it because it's happened to me. I don't like the idea of stopping and not going all the way through the cut. And the reason for that is because usually the end of the log is not cut straight. It's usually cut crooked. Okay? The loggers don't always cut straight. So if you end up with a slanted cut, you're still going to have the problem of possibly catching on something on your way back. But the biggest thing is you're heating the blade up when you go back. To think that taking the sawdust off of the board by using the teeth of the saw is a good thing, I beg to differ, okay? Because to me, when you bring the saw back and you let the blade rest on the wood, you're heating the teeth up. And the worst part about it is you're only heating the teeth. You're not really hitting the main part of the blade. So you're actually making the teeth more dull. And Wood Miser explains that in their book very well. And I think it's something that should be adhered to. Once you do this for a while, you know, so you start to realize these things. Now, if you've never had the other thing, first let me just say this. The one part which I just said is about the heating of the teeth. Let me dump this, I'll come back and finish this. The other thing about dragging the saw blade backwards across the top of the wood, which if you do it and you've never had experienced any problems with it, I'm glad for you, and I hope you never do. So let me tell you what I've experienced. Cut through, you have your saw curve, the flitch or whatever piece of wood was taken off, went to back up, there was a little nub on the side, something was sticking up, I don't know, something similar to like a little thing like that, but it was heavier. Grabbed the hull of the blade and pulled the blade off forward. Pushing backwards on the blade of the Wood Miser, you have the bearings with the shoulder there that's holding it, and that's going to keep it pretty much from going anywhere when you push through a cut. That's the whole purpose of that. But when you pull back out of a cut, you have got to be very, very careful, because 3 times that I've tried to pull out of a cut, 3 times the saw blade has got pulled off. And once was because the wood was so frozen that the sawdust was freezing behind me while I was making the cut, and I couldn't come back. That one I think you saw in a video where I literally had to cut the blade out of the saw kerf with a chainsaw. The other times you didn't see, give me a minute, I'll tell you the rest. I want to keep going here. Yeah, what you didn't see was where I would take 2 pieces of wood, right? I'm cutting the top off. I go through, and because the blade has an arch on it, and after you would cut through, the blade tends to rise slightly. And I know it shouldn't, but mine does, just slightly. When it comes back, it wants to catch on. And I wasn't watching, I cranked through it, I was talking to somebody, I went to come back, and off came the blade. And let me tell you, when you do that, those blades, you may as well take a piece of, or you may as well take a tin snips, cut them in little pieces, and throw them in the garbage, because they're not any good anymore. Because what's happened is, you force the teeth, when you pull them out like that, to grab a hold of the metal frame that they guide themselves through on the you know, the protective covers. And once you do that, that tooth is done. You can sharpen that blade 15 times and you're never going to get that blade to be right, because what happens with it, now naturally there's always the exception to the rule, but what happens to the blade is you put a kink in it. And once you have a kink in it, we went all through that, what happens with kinks in blades. They're firewood. Or, yeah, firewood. They're junk. So that's all you can do with them. Just throw them away. I guess I got more than I can carry here. For those of you who love when I repeat myself, I'm saying it again. 3 things happen. If the wood is frozen and you cut through and you make the cant, that sawdust, and there's even some on here, that sawdust that lays on here sometimes freezes solid. Okay, if the wood is frozen as well, because you're opening up pores that possibly hadn't frozen yet, and they like flash freeze. So you run the blade through, you take off this board, and sometimes I have to pry the board off because it actually froze this past winter that quickly, but just follow me. You run the saw through, you take the board off, you go to back up, and you got frozen sawdust that's actually stopping the blade from wanting to come back. That can pull the blade off forward. This is why I always run through the cut, raise the saw head, and Wood-Mizer tells you to do this. Raise the saw head and back it out. That's what I always do. Now, the reason I'm telling you about these things is because I didn't do it then. Okay? I was used to a circular mill, and when I started using the bandsaw mill, there were little things that you needed to know that happen, that don't happen with a circular mill. And the other thing is, one is if you're working with frozen wood. One is if you get the tiniest little bit of sliver of something come up, and you never know if the log's going to cant itself. If the log, or not cant, but bend. If the log is being stressed and it's laying there and all of a sudden that one end comes up, you can't pull the blade past that. Another reason to lift it up. And that final reason then would be if the blade has a small concave shape to it. That concaveness could, the back of the blade, the back of the blade that's running through the saw could actually be as low as what the setting is of the saw teeth. And that's not going to help you to be able to back up. So all you guys that do that, I don't care if you do it. If you get away with it, good for you. But I found it to not be profitable to do it that way. And also that relates back to what I was saying there about I'm not on a time schedule. I don't think that going down the cut, cranking the blade up 2 turns and bringing it back and cranking it back down, kiss the log, and I don't think that that's a whole lot of time wasted. I think that that's actually quality time spent, because then I eliminate the problems that you have if the cant moves, and sometimes it does move. Sometimes the dog lets go. So this way here, if anything like that happens, you're sort of ahead of the game. And you can write out, one guy suggested to write out on a whiteboard all of the numbers you would need to make a cut. Like say, you come down 1 1/8, and on your scale it's like, I don't know, 12 7/8, and subtract from that or whatever. That's not a bad idea. It's a good idea as long as everything's working out. And as far as kissing the log, somebody had mentioned that maybe that's not the best way to do it. Let me tell you, when you watch videos of guys who know how to do this, whenever they kiss the log, they'll kiss it in the center of the log to find out how high it is. It's a very fast, efficient way to find out what's happening to the log and what the log is shaped like. That's why I do it. And that's why a lot of other guys do it who know how to saw. And again, like I said before, if you don't like kissing the log and you'd rather do it the math way, there's no right or wrong way. Here's what's right or wrong about wood. If when you cut it, you got what you want, that's it. You're right. Doesn't matter what anybody says. If you're looking for a 1x6 and you end up with 1x6s, then you got it. If you're looking for bar tops 2 inches thick and you got them, what's the complaint? What does it matter how you got them? Yes, there's a couple of different things that might be a little better or could have been better. But it doesn't matter. The point is you got the mill, enjoy it. Get what you need out of it. That's my saying. Use what you can out of it and keep going. Well, that worked out good. Buckets out. Got a nice pile of kindling. I can still reach my light switch down in there. Can't ask for more than that. I got a 2x4 in there that goes on the kiln. I just want to dump that out. And I'll lower the bucket so the water don't go in the bucket. Oh, there we are. Ooh. It's not just the windows, guys. Look how foggy it is here. It's like being in Transylvania. So these are the boards for the planters I want to make her. The strawberry things in the back. But I put that Thompson water seal on there. I'm leaving them dry. Seems like it takes 2 or 3 days, I guess, in this goofy weather. I think it's time for me to go start bugging Sally for lunch. When Bullseye's wet like this, you can see just how thin he actually is. I mean, he's not real thin, but he's got a lot of muscles on him, this guy, from all the walking that he does and all the running. You cleaning yourself up, boy? Why don't you take a nap? Over by the stove is nice and warm. So far I'm not getting anything from these peppers. I may have to get some more seeds, but I am getting the sauce tomatoes. The Rutgers tomatoes are coming up pretty good. And then the early Jersey cabbage is coming up. As long as I have 24 cabbages, that's enough for me to make a 5-gallon bucket of sauerkraut and stuff come fall next year. So far so good. I'm going to just leave this thing lean over top of this section because these are already getting high enough to hit the top of the seed thing. Now this lettuce isn't going to grow that fast. It's going to get wider. Pretty soon I'll be transplanting these. 2 days ago I washed her car, and this is how muddy it is here. That 5 miles of road to get to town is really murder on a car. I've put new panels under this thing at least 3 times already, just trying to hang on to the car so that we can use it as our beater car for getting down the mountain. The other day somebody said to me that I never talk about the smell of the wood. Well, I gotta tell you, when I just walked into the garage, I got a good whiff of this pine, and it is smelling good. It smells like somebody just scrubbed the garage down with pine salt.